window, that little curly Q in the middle, that was a split for frequencies. Because the transmit and the receive portion of a cell phone are, how many megahertz apart? Like 80? 70? They're pretty far apart. So it makes it optimal. It makes it optimal for receiving and transmitting. Okay, so I've talked for a while. Any questions? I've covered an awful lot of information today. And again, it's not all on the test. Much of it won't be on the test. But what is useful is to understand the concepts. The concept of wavelength versus frequency when you're trying to figure out what antenna you want to put up. Or what frequencies you want to use based on how much space you have to put up antennas. The combining of components for many reasons, but especially for antennas. Power we talked about earlier. You're going to be generating a lot of heat. You don't want to be generating a lot of heat, but at least this, you can think of ways, if possibly, to improve. Example, if you are one of those hams who likes to use lots and lots of power, many of the ham bands, the maximum allowable power, as you get up to the higher licenses, is 2,000 watts. That's kind of a lot of power for someone at home. All right, 2,000 watts of power. Now, if you have to supply electricity, there's another concept as well, that most amplifiers, the thing that gives you your 2,000 watts, is not 100% efficient. So you're going to throw away a lot of what you feed it in heat. So you have, let's say it's 50% efficient. And that's actually pretty good. So let's say you're 50% efficient. So if you're transmitting 2,000 watts, you're going to need 4,000 watts of power. So let's do a little math in our heads. 4,000 watts of power to feed it. And your so let's talk about, let's do a little thought experiment here. They may. You have 2,000 watts of RF that you're generating. You have 50% efficiency, so you have to supply AC power 4,000 watts.
That must be an MSJ amplifier.
No, 50% is actually pretty efficient for a lot of the modulations that we use. Some modulations let you get higher, but that's a talk for another day. Okay, 4,000 watts. What voltage you have coming to your house?
120.
How much current are you going to have to pull through that?
33.
All right. So at 120 volts, you need 33 amps. What are most of the circuits in your house?
15, 20.
Sometimes 20,
Yeah.
right? So this is going to be kind of hard to do. Right, 12 gauge wire is good for 20 amps. I'm not sure what gauge we need for this, probably 8 gauge. More?
No gauge.
No gauge?
You can't pull that low, you can't pull 33 amps off one side of 220. I mean, you'll unbalance your load going into the house if you do that, and you'll be
Okay, so
shorting stuff out someplace else.
so what can we do to use our amplifier?
Step up the voltage.
To what's
220.
240, 220?
Whatever it takes.
Let's say 240.
You can't get to your neighbor.
All right, so you can get a 240 line into your house, and it'll be 16.5 amps. That's doable. Yes?
That's cool.
All right.
typically speaking, you got 200 amp service coming in on the new houses. So pulling 33 amp off one side would
Yeah,
definitely cause an imbalance on your load.
right. Okay, so here's an example of what we learned tonight. Here's how you solve a problem. You take your voltage up, you drop your current, and you can make something work that you couldn't make work before.
Alright, so that was a good question. So, when would it be necessary to put out 2,000 watts?
If you want to win the contest.
If California's coming in very hard, S9, and you need to get over them to make the DX contact.
More
So it's
contest.
drowning out other hands.
No, it has to do,
Extending your reach.
some of it's a competitive thing. Some of it is just reaching the guy that's so far away that not much signal gets there.
That's where the magic all comes together.
That there's,
I mean, is this
Propagation,
common?
right,
Is this common?
that people use 2,000 watts,
Yeah.
yes. There's a lot of people out there doing it. I never did. I kept myself to about 100 watts.
I was talking to a guy using full legal on 2 meter last week.
That's something.
I'd like to see his setup.
Yeah, as you go higher in frequency, you tend not to use as much power either.
Or need it?
Depends what you want to do.
You know,
Most people
bounce off
talking
the
2 meters talk in town. If you want to talk across the country, kick up the power. Now, let's talk, we're almost out of time. Let me talk a little practicality here. A lot of ham radio is public service. Okay, like I said at the very beginning, if all else fails, there's ham radio. That's kind of a saying that ARRL has. If all else fails, there's still ham radio. I think that's on a coffee cup somewhere. But, in fact, I'm gonna get that coffee cup. You'll see it. But if all else fails, was anyone aware of the sunspot activity recently?
Oh, you mean with the propagation?
Yeah.
Sporadic heat going on right now, because I was talking from Madison, Wisconsin
I'm
to Chicago on
I'm doing
CFMC.
the opposite. I'm doing the opposite now. Sometimes the sun sends out energy that so highly ionizes the atmosphere that nothing gets out. It just all gets absorbed.
Well, reflected, it kind of blocks it.
Yeah. And absorbs it. So when that happens, and that happens, the sun gets active sometimes. They say that in some cases, enough of it comes down, enough of these rays come down, and they'll even affect the power grid. You've heard of that, haven't you?
Sure.
The grid gets it absorbed because they're big antennas.
Carrington event.
It absorbs it, and just everything goes out of whack. In addition, a lot of radio doesn't work anymore. You can't talk to your satellites anymore, which most of the communications these days is through satellites. That's a good time that you want to have your 2,000 watt amplifier, so if it's absorbing a lot, you've got a lot more to help you get through in an emergency. Because you may not, no one may be able to get through otherwise.
So you're gonna need a dedicated generator just for your.
You mean when the grid goes down?
Was that Montreal back in the 80s?
Yeah.
Ontario.
Or
Yeah,
Ontario? Was it back?
yeah, they had an event there.
That was that solar flare that knocked out.
That lasted for a month or two, didn't it?
I don't think it was that long. I think the damage lasted a month or two, but the actual event was much shorter. I have, yeah,
Why don't we say, why Canada, not United States?
what do you,
Why did Canada get knocked out and not United States?
I really don't know.
Because you're closer to the polar,
Oh.
polar sides, north and south. So if you're closer to the polars, to the polar sides, you'll get more, what is that, when
Flux.
the more flux will go to the polar sides, and since you're closer to the polar sides, you'll get that.
And that's also why you see the
Northern
aurora
lights.
borealis.
Yeah.
So so the point I'm trying to get is, it's good to live in the United States.
Would it be better to live down in Ecuador?
No, flies will get out. Ebola, what is that, Ebola going around right now?
No, that's in Africa.
Close.
In Texas.
There's one in Texas, yes. Okay, so practical stuff, and you're right, that, you know, some of it is just, ego, no, some of it is contesting, you want to be stronger than the other guy. And some of it could be necessary in a really bad conditions. One last quick story, I like to go on, they're called the expeditions. You go somewhere where there are no hams or very few hams, and everybody in the world wants to talk to you, because no ham radio has come out of that place. So there's a little island called Miquelon Island off of Canada. It's a FP is their prefix, and
Do they
I went
speak
up there.
French there?
Pardon?
Do they speak French there?
Yeah, it's actually, it's French, it's owned by France,
Yeah, that's
even
the-
though it's right next to Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And that's why it counts as a different country, because it's French, but it's in Canada, it's almost in Canada, it's in the water. So some friends of mine went up there with me in August, 88, I think. And we get there and we plant ourselves on the beach, we're gonna, on an island, we're gonna talk over the water, which is great propagation, and fire up the radios, silent. Did not hear a single signal. And we thought we did something wrong. There was a solar event. And in our 7-day trip, the first 2 days were silent. We heard a guy from Newfoundland across the water, that was it. And eventually we talked to 10,000 hams all over the world. And that was just 5 days worth. We didn't sleep. We worked 3 radios, 24 hours a day.
What radios did you have?
Oh gosh, do I remember? I
What
don't-
bands did you use?
We used 20, we put up a special antenna on the beach for 20. We actually did every band, we even did 160. But we concentrated on 20 because that's where our best signal was. And we literally talked to, I think, 136 countries.
Holy shit.
In 5 days. But it was them wanting to talk to us. It's different. And I've also been to Vanuatu. It's down here between New Zealand and Australia. And we went to Saba Island, which is near St. Martin. And they're great trips. Really a nice time. You go for a week. You enjoy the place. Everyone in the world wants to talk to you. Yes, sir.
Well, I asked Tim this, and you might know, is the Prairie DX website still up? Or?
You know, I bet you it is. I haven't been on it, but I bet you they're keeping it up. Because Rick is still involved. And he set it up.
Is that Rick, ZZ?
Royston.
Which one?
Rick Royston.
Yeah, it's up at ZZ, I think it's called.
He lives in Florida
Yeah, right.
now. He
Okay.
used to live here. Okay, so we're out of time, but thank you for your attention.
And you mentioned the Prairie DX website, because that was the website that covered those DX expeditions. That's where you look up what they did on Vanuatu, it's on the Prairie DX.
Oh, all the people.
Chanting.